Amen.
Okay, so I would just let me give you a quick overview of church development on the next slide. We were founded in 1992, and our mission is to increase generosity without fundraising. And we've been part of just a magnificent series of wonderful experiences. We've helped a couple hundred churches, and we've raised more than $1 billion so far. So I'm just overjoyed to be part of that. So we hope that we're different from other Church Capital Campaign consultants in that we try to be based in Scripture, but we, in addition, we collect a great deal of research. So on the next slide, you can see that our values are really, we try to proceed with both faith and reason. So the next slide, that's me. I've been doing this for more than 30 years. I'm a cancer survivor, husband, father, author of a couple books and some academic research. But most importantly, on the next slide, you've got the real experts. Dave Moore, the executive director of First Presbyterian Church in Edmond, Oklahoma, and Megan Berdalski, the stewardship director of Visitation Parish in Kansas City, Missouri. Unfortunately, Paul Alexander was not able to join us. He had another event he was committed to that's gone over a little bit of time. But let me ask Dave to introduce himself, and then Megan, if she could introduce herself. Dave, over to you.
Sure. Well, so welcome, friends. My name is Dave Moore, and I live in Edmond, Oklahoma. I actually was in the Kansas City area for about 23 years prior to that, where I planted New Summit Presbyterian Church there in Lee Summit, Missouri. And actually had some great interaction with the ecumenical community there. I had a chance to do a lot of DARE talks at Our Lady of Presentation Elementary School, and then I did a leadership retreat for the Holy Spirit Catholic Church, and also helped as a facilitator for St. Margaret's when they were doing a little bit of their work with Dennis. I work here in something like the executive pastor's role, and so I have oversight of personnel and finance and property and communication. I'm married to Rhonda. We have 2 kids who are adults, grown, and one is in Oklahoma, Emily, and she is an artist, an illustrator, and then our son Chris is in St. Louis, and he's married to Megan, and they have our first grandchild, Nora. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, congratulations on the grandchild. That's really exciting, Dave.
Yeah.
Got to be the best. And speaking of Megan Berdalski, how about yourself? Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Berdalski, and I am the Stewardship Director at Visitation Catholic Parish in Kansas City, Missouri. I have about 20 years experience in Catholic church management, 8 years as a parish manager, and now a little over 12 years in my current position. I am a happy wife and mother to 2 children, who both of whom are supposed to have graduation celebrations in May. My daughter with her bachelor's from Rockhurst University, and my son who will be graduating from high school. I'm right now anticipating both of those events to be canceled, but I am still very proud of their achievements and looking forward to celebrating in some way with them.
Megan, thank you so much for joining us. So as we proceed, I will ask lots of questions of both of you. I meant this to be conversational. And to our members who have joined us from around the country, I would like to hear your questions. So you can enter those by hovering your cursor at the bottom of your screen. There is a tab for Q&A, and there's also a tab for chat. And when you press on the chat button, you'll see a column pop up in the right. And the first note that I have, it says we're cutting in and out a bit on the audio. So please give me feedback if that is continuing right now. If in fact that is happening, I apologize, and we will try a plan B. But that is, the chat box is where you can enter your questions. Now there's another function in there related to chat, and so all of our presenters can see it. Now, the first thing that I would like feedback from Megan and Dave, is this set of statistics true for you? Gallup polling in their ME25 analysis of thousands of churches discovered that only 15% are committed through thick and thin. Now, writer Matthew Kelly estimates that only 6% are committed. These are the folks who are with you, who will give even if you do not ask. These are the folks we think of as being absolute saints. Out of all of us, only 5% tithe, and most of us give 2% or less of our income. Now, in a normal church, 10% comes in cash, 50% comes in checks, and 40% comes in any form of electronic fund transfer giving. So the worry is that if we don't hold worship, if people are not in the door, and by the way, the average attendance per month of churches is now 1.2, so a person would attend Sunday worship 1.2 times. So in the best of circumstances, you might have a third of your people in worship on any given Sunday. And if you don't hold worship at all, we worry that 60% of your revenue is lost. Now, Megan and Dave, please reflect for a moment. Megan, would you mind going first? And I hold you up first because you've always kind of been my hero. You're an early adopter and you're a thorough professional. And I'm pretty sure your statistics are different from this. So do you mind talking for 1 minute on how these statistics relate to your successful stewardship efforts?
Yes, our statistics are definitely very different from these on the screen. We have about 70% of our parishioners who actually give something over the course of the year. Probably about 50 to 55% are true regular givers, and another 15% who give somewhat sporadically or at least a couple of times over the course of a year. So already we're doing a little bit better. And then probably the thing that would be the most different is that we get about 70% of our revenue, and we are over 4 million in revenue in our parish, and over 70% of that comes in through electronic giving. So we have so many people that give that way rather than through the offering basket on Sunday. So fortunately, we're not experiencing as much of a dip as some other parishes and churches might be at this time.
Well, 70% is fairly fantastic. How many years have you been pushing online giving, Megan?
I know it predates my time at Visitations, and I've been there over 12 years. So I'm guessing 15 to 20 years that we've really been pushing that. And so we have a lot of people that have joined that group over time. We were not at 70% 10 years ago, but we've gradually moved to that as more and more people realize, hey, it's real easy and I don't have to remember my envelope, or I just know that it's happening whether I am at Mass or if I'm on vacation or whatever, it's still going.
Okay. So what do you think the key to success, your key to success has been in the growth of your giving? Okay, Megan is frozen. Oh, there she is. Megan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What has been the key to your success to grow enrollment in online recurring giving?
Most of our increase was several years back now. We've held steady at this rate for several years, but we really did just keep reminding people that it was an option in our annual appeals and in our bulletin and various communications over the course of each year. And over time, we converted a lot of people who were doing the more traditional offering envelopes over to the online or automatic giving over time.
Okay. Well, Megan, congratulations. 70%'s got to be the gold standard. All right, now let me shift and ask Dave. Dave, you know, I'm a worry bird, and you guys, you've known me for 20 years. I worry that annual giving is going to take a dip. Since all we do here is church capital campaigns, and all of our statistics are gathered around that, and we stick with the church for 3 years after their capital campaign to make sure their annual giving goes up 10% per year. I worry about that annual giving. Tell me about you at First Pres of Edmond. Tell me about the automated giving that's happening there.
Sure. So, the first thing is that, I know everyone around the country is in a different place. For us, our last worship service on site was Sunday, March 15th. So we have been live stream since then. Now, and it appears, as these restrictions are being increased by the federal government and the state government of Oklahoma, and now by the city of Edmond, it appears likely that we will not be able to worship together in the same place until at least May. And, we wonder if it might not go further than that. But we've been relatively very fortunate. Had this happened to us in October, this might have been much more of a crisis for this church. Because our giving, we have quite a few people who give 100% of their tithe or their estimate of giving at the beginning of the year, in January and February, and sometimes even in December. Like Megan, we're probably at about 70% of our families who give in some fashion. We had quite a successful stewardship campaign last year. We started to do some things differently. We had previously had a commitment Sunday, and as Dennis mentioned, if you have a commitment Sunday and that's the day on which people bring a card up to put in the offering plate, or they bring it up to the altar or whatever, you're really only able to contact on that given day about a third of your congregants. And so what we did this year was we created an electronic option so people could submit their estimate of giving. And the vast majority, well over about 80% of the people who submitted an estimate of giving did so electronically this year. Now, we do have quite a few who still give by check. We get very, very little cash per week, maybe a couple $100 in the offering plate. But quite a few of our folks give by check, but we're seeing an increasing number of people who are giving electronically. A year ago, we introduced a smartphone app that we're doing with a company called Subsplash out of Seattle. We have really enjoyed working with them. They've done a terrific job. I have talked to a lot of large church pastors who have said, well, we tried an app and we dumped it because we only had about 10% of our folks use it. Our experience has been exactly the opposite. When we developed our smartphone app, we have an average of about 600 to 700 in worship. And we have had over 1,000 people who have downloaded the app. And what we found is that with social media here in these last 3 weeks, the number of app downloads, the number of Facebook likes, the number of Facebook follows, the number of Instagram follows and Twitter follows is growing with every passing day. So people are really hungry to stay connected to the church. And there's quite a strong sense of feeling of loss for the gathered community. What we're seeing in these first few weeks is that the number of people who are giving is continuing to stay fairly strong. As I said, we finished February with about $200,000 plus in cash over expense. And so we were in a better position to be able to weather a little bit of a storm. And so now we're looking at what comes next, where people are using the Subsplash giving option through our smartphone app. They're giving electronically through our website, but then they're also using the option to do an electronic withdrawal from the checking account. Which is what my wife and I do. Our tithe is once a month and it's just automatically scheduled. And what we found is that we like that option best because it does not cost us and it does not cost the church anything. When you use an app like Subsplash, they will charge a small percentage for a donation. And it averages about 2.9%. So if you're giving $100, you lose $2.90 of that. Now, Subsplash is giving people the option of paying that fee. So that's what we're seeing right now. We think the giving is continuing to be strong, but we wonder how that will be as we extend in to May, perhaps in June. And then, of course, we're also wondering what the cumulative impact is going to be on the economy as people are losing jobs.
Right, Paul. We are all worried about that and praying about that. So Dave, I did not know you had an app, and I think that is brilliant. So 3 weeks from today, we will be having a webinar on how to create an app for your congregation, and we'll share with you app vendors. So you'll have some options, but you can see this is the future. So all of us are going to have an app for our congregation in the very near future. So Dave, I might ask you to join that as well in 3 weeks. So thank you for that perspective. Let me shift now to Paul Alexander. Paul, thank you much for joining us. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm here and glad to be with you.
Well, great. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. So we heard from both Megan and Dave that giving has indeed taken a dip. However, for both of them, they have enrolled 70% of their congregants in online giving before this challenge. And as you take an overview of the 100 churches for which you are a shepherd from a diocesan level in the Episcopal Church in Colorado, what is your perception of online giving among the churches that you serve?
Well, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, we have almost 100 churches here around Colorado, what we've been able to do as a diocese, because there's about a third of the churches that aren't online, at least a third, probably up to 40%, that haven't taken that plunge yet, and they're realizing that this is a critical time. The only way they can actually maintain even a portion is to move online. So we've been able to, by having them piggyback along the diocese, get about a third of those churches that have been offline immediately online, and they're doing both texting and then putting a form on their website that they can give, and it's been a real boon. So on the one hand, it's been a real blessing because it's gotten churches that have been reluctant to get online to move online and to move in texting as well during the service.
Oh, great. Well, it's a challenge, but boy, everybody's thinking the same thing. We've got to do that. Now, the most creative idea I have heard so far in online worship is to actually have a moment during online worship to present, this is the moment in which we normally give. Because we are separate, we won't be able to take a collection, but allow me to bring this basket forward that represents our giving and place it here and give gratitude to those of you who are sharing as we share back a portion of our blessings with the church. That moment seems to be really good. Now we've got two different questions on our online Q&A. What online platform do you recommend? We've got a bunch of options. So Dave, your online, can you tell me, Megan and Dave, Megan, you go first. What online platform do you use to facilitate online giving?
Well, we've been using Vanco, V-A-N-C-O, for all of our electronic giving for probably 2 decades. So when we moved and added an online giving page to our website, probably 5-6 years ago, we just did it through Vanco because we were already pleased with the service we got from them, and we use them for a lot of other things as well. Okay,
Dave, what online giving platform do you use?
We're using Subsplash for our online giving, yeah.
Okay, so in a couple slides down in the future, we will list all the online giving platforms that we see repeatedly through different churches. Now let me shift, going ahead to the next slide. So on this slide, we're looking at how many people, if we had the ability to raise your hand, how many people have made an online purchase recently? Well, that's most of us. This does reflect over into the church world. Megan and Dave have 70% of their people giving But from a national survey, 60% are willing to give to their church digitally. Now, I did not know this statistic until just recently, the second one. 49% of all church transactions are done with a card. And I think the reason why a card is involved because it provides an additional layer of protection. So if there is fraud, a credit card company will protect you. They'll just give you one additional layer. Now, the average, if you take all church giving divided by number of adults who attend, the average giving is about $17. Easy to round that up to 20. And when we resume normalcy, one of our webinars in the future will be about the dip jar, which is a non-cash giving options, the size of a beverage can that you can have in your foyer, so people who don't have cash and want to give can give electronically with just the dip of a credit card. Now, we all have a cell phone. We can all give via cell phone now that there are so many text to give options. And your return on investment in deploying these variety of giving options is spectacular. So I encourage you to do something. Start experimenting this minute. Now, on our next slide, we were going to shift and examine a case study in difficult giving. Since there are so many Catholic churches named St. Mary's, I found a St. Mary's and I clicked on it, and this was in the town of Elbow, Iowa, and I wanted to make an online gift, and I could not find where I go to make a donation. And when I finally found it, it required a great deal of information. And as a result of that, I did not proceed. It looked like it was going to take me a half an hour to make that gift. Now, by the same token, yeah, Dave.
Yeah, let me just comment on that. What we are finding, and we've seen some research around the country, is that 95% of first-time guests to a church will go look at your website before they come to your church.
Right.
And
right.
and so to emphasize your point, Dennis, and this is not just for donations, but even for things like, we totally reworked our website so that the first thing that you see is the basics. How do I find your church?
Right.
Where do I park?
Right.
Where do I take my kids?
Right.
And so that, we've really changed our thinking that the website is for the external communication, and then other forms of communication are for internal communication. The website is not the place where you want to have your, facility use or wedding use policy in detail on. And so with donations, you're absolutely right. How easily can they find that?
Right. That's huge. So church shopping has changed. It used to be friend to friend. It is now no longer the dominant way. The preeminent way is finding it on the web. So your search engine optimization terms that you deploy on your website will really dictate how people find you. And then, as Dave said, literally how they find their way to that front door. So you've got to be very comfortable and very friendly. And Dave, I've crawled all through your website, and it is impressive. It is a model. So for those of you who are listening and you want to see an awesome website, go to Dave's website right now, First Presbyterian Church of Edmond, Oklahoma, and pretend you're a visitor. Dave, you get a gold medal for that.
Oh,
now,
thanks.
Well, for a case study in easy giving, I've chosen Red Cross. So you can shrink your screen right now. If our electronics had worked perfectly, I would have done this. But you can, if you go to Red Cross, the national website, immediately gives you an option to find an opportunity to give. And then you may click on an amount. And then you may click on, would you like to give it by credit card, debit card, or PayPal? So, and it gives you the option immediately to make a single gift or a recurring gift. So thematically, we want to proceed all the time with nurturing people towards recurring giving. So our two key concepts, we'll cover more in just a minute. Make it easy and make it recurring. And I think Red Cross, there's a reason why they're one of the top 10 largest recipients of donations in the world. It's because they make giving easy. So please take that. Please take Dave's church as an example, and then take Red Cross as well. Now, I'd like to offer up these easy giving options. Now, the third bullet is the many platforms, a few of the many platforms that we hear repeated regularly. And Megan just offered another one, Vanco, V-A-N-C-O. But PayPal is a real leader. They give nonprofits discounts. It is an automated, it's a quick function. Visa is set up. All of us are very comfortable using a credit card. Visa is set up to facilitate donations. It is worth your while to spend some time examining the easy options to give and select one that you can install. Paul Alexander, let me ask you, if you had to make a guess at that platform which is most used by your Episcopal churches in Colorado, what guess would you venture to offer?
Actually, I can give you a very detailed. Most of them are using Vanco or also Realm, which is more sophisticated. I think one of the things that we found about some of the easy ones, the good thing is it's easy to get online. The bad thing is that it's hard to do pledges, and it's hard to follow up on some of the more details. So there's a trade-off, I think, from some of the really simple ones as opposed to the sophisticated, and really being able to communicate with donors and with the people that pledge in a good way. So I think we encourage parishes to get on a some sort of a management system like Realm or something that can actually help communicate with the parishioners in a much more sophisticated way. But if you want to get online quickly, the ones you mentioned are great.
Great. Well, thank you, Paul. So let me ask you all if you could to put in the chat bar right now, does anyone among the many people from around the universe who have joined us on our webinar today employ Venmo to receive donations to your church? Paul or Megan or Dave, do any of you use Venmo? V-E-N-M-O, Venmo. Now that's an app that kids use to give each other money. Paul, do you do it?
There's a number of parishes that do that. Technically, it's not something that they encourage because it's really meant to be an individual to individual giving platform. And so, you have to be a little bit just kind of aware of that. But it is, as far as the younger generation, it's the way that they give, and they shift back and forth. So it's a very powerful tool for that.
Yeah.
We've been.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, we do not use Venmo. We've used PayPal, and then we've also been using Square options for like when people come for a congregational dinner or for an event, because again, increasingly people do not carry cash.
Oh, right. Nobody carries. Go ahead, Megan.
Yes, I would also discourage Venmo because of the lack of ability to get reporting so that you can record contributions and give your members statements with regard to that. So, I don't think that's probably the best option. There are many others that would be better.
So, Megan, you're making a good point. Venmo is an odd kid-to-kid transfer. So Laura Zimmerman, hi Laura, glad you could join us, points out that Venmo is used between kids, and it works great. So question here is, how do we make giving easy from the younger generation? That is the big question. So Venmo is going to have to solve that problem. But Laura points out the problem with Venmo is to tie it back to church accounting. So at the end of the year, we can tell the donor, thank you, you gave to us this amount of money. So it's a challenge. So Venmo, it's great to access the younger generation, but boy, it has some serious weaknesses. Now, in my opinion, the rising tide will shift us towards a church app in which we have a real quick and easy, once you're, just like Dave is a leader here, if you're part of the church, you're going to get the app. So the new church member class is going to shrink to one sentence, get the app. Okay, then you'll find out everything. And that they will have an experience of an opportunity to text to give. But most importantly, my favorite is text to pledge. It's a low threshold for security. There's no sensitive information. The burden is upon the church staff to follow up to get the details. But boy, I'm fine with that. Dave, have you had any experience with text to give yet?
Yeah, we use text to give as well, and it's through our Subsplash app. And then we've also done the text to pledge, the ability for people to use a form site that goes directly to our finance office staff, so people can do that as well. I do want to mention one thing that in all this high tech, the soft tech or the low tech stuff becomes even more important. I know that during this time when the church is scattered, we're finding that the importance of phone calls, the importance of I know some people don't want to send notes because they're afraid that the virus can be on the the envelope. But I mean, in terms of people calling, we're doing a very intense amount of phone calling right now. And how can we pray for you? How are you doing? How are things going for your family? How are things working for you? And just there's a lot of pastoral care. And of course, I don't do that because I'm trying to get money, but I do believe that has a direct impact on people's desire to continue giving. Is that, well, our church cares for us. And so, a lot of what we're doing right now, we're doing something that we kind of call like the daily office, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. We have posts on social media, and our youth worship service is running live. We're live streaming, worship services. So that, all of those things become ways in which we stay in connection with the church. And I think all of that ultimately does have an impact on giving as well.
But David has a huge impact. Go ahead.
A couple questions from the Q&A too that have come in. Some people are wondering, Dave, about the ease of setting up the app that you were talking about. Just what was that process like? How quick and easy was it to get up and running? Also a question about if you could speak to, or if anyone could speak to, some generational challenges with older folks who are wanting to participate in giving to the church in this way. How can we invite them to be a part of this as well? And then just finally, how do you market e-giving when you haven't already launched it or announced it at Mass or another worship service? How do you kind of announce it now that we're not together in person?
Well, let's shift ahead to the next slide, because what we really want to do is shift from raising money to really being pastoral. So how do we connect with people? That is the greater question, and that's the subject of our next webinar in 2 weeks. So engagement in the time of the virus, that's really our challenge. And Dave, as in everything else, you're kind of a leader in that regard. So that's where we really should be focusing our time. How do we connect with people when we cannot do that in person? Now, generationally, let me touch on that just briefly. A lot of people do have technology and are comfortable with making a purchase online. So yes, it is an issue, but over time, gosh, that generational difference is declining dramatically. The most dramatic generational difference is in the use of Venmo. That seems to be a 30-year-old person phenomenon. They use it for everything because they don't carry cash. So we've got to figure out how to solve that problem. But we're almost done, so I want to talk about that engagement phenomenon, and I want to get ready for that big webinar we're having in a couple weeks. But before we do, I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to reflect on these key principles in easy giving options. Now, let's talk about that very first question that you talked about that was posted in the Q&A. How do we introduce these online giving options when this might be brand new to our people? The most important principle is to ask. So in order to do that, you're going to have to get everybody's email address. You can do this on social media, but the best way to do that is through email. Now, I just attended a webinar myself yesterday on, it was a corporate sales webinar. And I, as you can imagine, gather everything I possibly can for the corporate world to share it with the church world. So I'm constantly reading books and consuming. And they applaud social media for socially connecting. But in terms of making a sale, email is more effective by a factor of 5 to 1. So when we ask for a gift, email is the best way to do that. Now, the way to do that is to push recurring giving options, tie it to the mission, tie it to the community. Ultimately, we want to guide people towards making an estate gift. And it would be great if your leaders could give online first and then tell everyone about it. The mobile giving is going to be the future, so you're going to have to get that parish app. And the overall guideline is to make this easy. Megan, let me hear from you as you reflect on these key principles and easy giving options. What would you add to this list, or what would you prioritize among this list?
Can you hear me, Dennis?
I can hear you great.
Okay, great. Because I did lose connection, and it's your fault because you asked me if I ever lost my internet, and I haven't in 6 Zoom meetings until you asked me this morning. So anyway, I think one thing that I would do right now is at this point in time, because we already have a fairly successful program, but it would be to let people know via our social media channels, because that's how we're doing most of our communication, is through social media and email. Just remind them that if they're not taking advantage of that, that is an option available to them at this time that they could use until they can start putting their envelope in the basket again.
Okay, great. So we want to keep connecting with people. That's the most important. Okay, Dave, how about you? Before I go to Paul, Dave, what would you add to or subtract from in the key principles for easy giving options?
Sure. So someone asked about setting up the app, and I would say that from what I'm hearing around the country, the key to setting up the app is a real commitment to do it and to do it well. There are companies out there that will set you up with an app, but the churches that I'm aware of that are using that and just doing nothing else, just saying, hey, we have an app, they are not being successful. We worked really, really hard at this, making sure that we communicated well and that we really tried to push people toward that and get them to sign up. So that's the ask part. In terms of getting everyone's email address, I would encourage all of you to use an opt-out rather than opt-in strategy. In other words, if someone gives you their email address, start including them immediately on all your correspondence and allow them to opt out rather than waiting to ask them if they want to sign up for the newsletter or something like that. The recurring giving option, yes, absolutely. And tying it to mission, people want to know, for instance, the difference between, like for instance, if I took our student ministry budget, which is fairly small, and I said, well, we only have X number of dollars that are available for our student ministry in 2020, as opposed to saying, about 15% of our total budget goes to student ministry. If you start thinking about things like utilities and custodial and insurance. So it's trying to do the narrative work of describing your budget to your people so that they can see that there's a people-to-people emphasis. And then the other piece of that is telling stories about someone who is, is connected with the church, someone that the church has helped, someone whose life has been changed. Those are so important. We are in the process of developing a foundation. We have a foundation and are trying to encourage people to do estate gifts. And we used this last season in the fall. We did the online first, so we had the key leaders of the church were encouraged to make their estimate of giving first, and then we announced the total of that to the congregation as we kicked off the program. So those would be some of the things we're doing. Yeah.
Dave, you are a leader and an innovator. You know, the telling of stories is just, it brings a statistic to life. It's not just a dry principle, but it's a real human. I can't wait for our webinar coming up in 2 weeks, because we're going to talk very specifically how to engage and what's the most effective and efficient and low cost ways to engage. So when you talk about telling stories, Dave, we've got to enter a whole new world on being competent in that regard. Paul Alexander, do you mind reflecting for a moment on these key principles as we move towards closure? In just a couple moments, we'll be done. But Paul, please share your infinite wisdom with us.
Infinite, yeah, there you go. Well, you know, one the thing that really has impressed me, and I would say that it's a blessing of this COVID-19, is that it's just so advanced. People moving online and connecting with each other, and the eagerness that people are wanting to tie each other as communities. So, you know, I think the key there thing as I look at your thing is tie it to mission, and you know, mission is rebuilding relationship, is reconciliation with each other and with God, and so, you know, this has given us an opportunity to make sure that we have everybody's email address, because 99% of the congregations do have it. We've been able to, you know, parishes are setting up, you know, calling trees to make sure and checking in on people, and, you know, getting that email address, and also saying, you know, can you join us for the worship service? So most of our churches are now on Zoom, or quite a lot of them are doing their either live Facebook or live Zoom, and we're having coffee hours before and coffee hours later, so we get people to join online. And so I think you know, I think it's this eagerness now, and people are recognizing that we have to be much more intentional about building community at this time. And so it's a natural shift to you know, to getting people's emails and to reminding people that the mission is going on even as we're distant from each other.
And it's a new normal, and it's not going to make our life easier. That is a fact. It's going to make it more challenging, but we can rise to the challenge. Just a quick question for Dave. Dave, would you mind telling us what did it cost to create your app? I know each of us will Google that subject, and we will get bids from different vendors, but can you give us a ballpark, Dave, what it cost First Pres Edmond?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was about $1,000 to $1,500 to create the app. But now remember, going through like Subsplash or PushPay and others, they provide you with so much information that helps you to market that and helps people to sign up. And we think that was a good cost for us to pay. They may have a slightly lower scale for smaller churches. So I would definitely check with them and with other companies that provide the app. And then we pay a monthly fee, which I think is about $145 a month. But that actually, we were actually saving some money there, because there were some other payments that we were making for things like text to give, that then it got caught up into that one fee.
Okay, but still, I mean, that's modest. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, you know, just to tag on to that most of these church management systems, you know, like Realm and others, have, you know, an integrated church app that just comes with the, you know, the monthly fee, and it is very reasonable, and it's sized according to the size of the church. So, you know, to develop have someone design one for you doesn't really make a lot of sense when you can just tag on to one of these systems that are already built in, and they're pretty sophisticated.
Well, thank you, Paul. So all of us are going to pursue that, and we're going to have to pursue it immediately. Now, we're way over time, but I see that our participants are not dropping off, which says to me that people do care strongly about this subject. So to segue towards closure and our next webinar, I am most excited about, and the next slide, just a quick preview of our April 15th member engagement in the time of the virus. Put it on your calendar and send this to your friends. You'll get another invitation, but send it out to your friends because this is really the most important thing. On the next slide, I want to highlight just two things on this. You know, I'm not in the business of promoting any one single provider of any one service, but I have come to very much appreciate BombBomb, down that fourth provider from the BombBomb, from the bottom. It is a tailored video option. It allows me, when I'm sending an email, to click on a singular app button within my email program and immediately create a tailored video to the person that I am talking to. So it can be very pastoral in nature. I can create this video and send it out to thousands of people, or I can send it just to my prayer team or just to my board. The cost of it is about $30 a month. It's based in Colorado Springs. I find myself using that app a lot. The next one I use is Zoom, and I use it for meetings of 2 or 3 are gathered together, or thousands. Last Friday, I was part of a Zoom meeting that had 2,300 people enrolled into it. And the person who ran it was very skilled. They broke us up into groups of 5 for a small group dialogue. So the capacity for Zoom to facilitate interaction is just fantastic. So those are a couple of things that we will talk about, and we will segment each of these and talk about efficiency. As Dave talked about earlier, social media connecting is incredibly important. But the caveat, is it the best way to ask for a donation? Perhaps not. Laura Zimmerman talks about asked a question in the chat box. We're about to do our Easter outreach. Any final thoughts on that? Yes. Do your ask with a video. You can present the ask during worship and say, look for your email that requests a special Easter gift from you. And then you can follow that up with an email that would have a video that would have a very easy click to give attachment as part of that email, which kind of goes back to the issues we're talking about here. What can I do to make it really easy to give, where I don't have to enter a half an hour's worth of data and reveal sensitive data just to make my Easter gift? So put it on your calendar, April 15th, 11 a.m. Okay, before we go, we will send these slides out to you, and we are available for your phone calls and emails. We exist just to help churches grow in their stewardship, health, and well-being. We want you to prosper. You don't have to show this. You can go back up to the last one. When we send you our slides, there's more information about church development. When you do have a capital campaign, please give us a call. That's how we make our money. That's what funds all the things we give away. Paul Alexander, last comments before we go. Anything that you would like to share? And then I'll ask Dave and Megan the same question.
No, I think, just believe and focus on the mission. And there's a lot of folks out there that can help you, support as you get up and running. Just give it a try. Just go get into it and don't think too much about it.
That's good advice. When in doubt, gun it. Full speed ahead. Thank you, Paul. How about you, Dave? Any last comments before we break?
Yeah, just, keep caring for each other. Tell the truth to your congregation. Be calm about it. Remind them that we all share this responsibility together, and that we're all going to get through it together. And then, I'm sure many of you are hearing about the CARES Act that was passed by Congress and signed by the president. I know that we're working on our application for that, and so just be aware of that as well.
Thank you, and you can qualify for 2.5 times a monthly average payroll as a grant. So everybody should be applying. Thank you for that, Dave. Okay, Megan Berdowski, final words of wisdom before we break.
I think besides asking for gifts, to continue to reach out to your members in whatever ways work for you, whether it's mail, email, social media, website updates, just stay connected because that's what people crave most right now when they're not able to get out of their homes.
Yep, that's a fact. That is so true. Megan, thank you very much. And Dave, thank you. And Paul Alexander, you three are saints. Thank you so much for joining us. Meredith and Stephanie, thank you for being behind the scenes to make this technology work. So go forth, good luck, and God bless. See you at the next webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.